Hello and welcome to another magical ass fucking episode of the club called the Investment Club. All right, um, so I try to do this just as a trying to remember this sort of thing because I think it's meaningful. If you guys ever find anything meaningful, helpful, useful, that sort of thing, invite your friends out. Let other people our age know, like, hey, like you don't gotta be poor. You know what I mean? Like, because everybody's fucking struggling. So I think helping each other out like that is really, meaningful. Also, shout out, we definitely trying to be doing this more consistently. Charity water, like charity, water though, and like you drink Worldwide Kitchen, and Austin, Austin, Texas, Pets Alive. Um, are really great charities. I checked them out. They're really highly rated, trustworthy charities. Charity Water, I tried at one of their multiple actually of their videos. Um, so it was personally through this, particularly at the end of the crash, I would be planning for donating 10% of what I make to those charities. But those are like some of the greater ones out there. Um, and of course, there's tax benefits to that. It's tax deductions, which I think we'll actually be talking about a little bit today, but in the very least, later on. But the differences between tax deductions and credits, which is different. But yeah, I just want to put that out there. Okay, so update on the market here. CPI data came out today. It was bad. It actually reminds me of exactly what happened last time. I believe it was the CPI data that came out. And what happened was that we had this crackdown here. This is where this started. And this showed such bad data that we couldn't, and I'll get into another perspective of all of this, of how it's still actually maintaining its reference to history. Because remember, I was talking about, like, to the exact day, it's referencing, .com crash, and it totally was. But it's also has been referencing in particularly the length of time between cycles, to get into this, of the great financial crisis. And of course now, since here, it looks like as though we had switched up the narrative between not going any longer with the .com crash, but now we're following along with the great financial crisis. So again, I'll get into this, but really quickly, those CPI data though. The general CPI data came in at 1%. We were expecting 0.7, so pretty big miss there. Core CPI data, which is the one that arguably matters more, still also missed. It was 0.6, and we were expecting 0.5. So bad data. Hence today. If you're wondering about but wait a second, how is it possible that we were following the .com crash and the Nasdaq specifically, and we're not doing that any longer? It's very well possible that first. So two things. So first of all, it's an option that we could have kept following it, right? Or we could have done what we're doing now, which is completing the great financial crisis length of the cycles. Again, we'll talk about this, switching up like that. So it is actually an option. Again, I was looking through this more, and I was seeing okay, I seemingly kind of missed this perspective. I was looking at it before, and I was thinking of it as a possibility, but now having seen it more fleshed out, it's okay, now it's actually really obvious. So as far as what about the Nasdaq, an option, very well, and we didn't go through it because, again, the data did not support that narrative. It couldn't. It was too bad. The other thing too is that it can very well still function in the sense of, but wait a second, we're also in the largest market bubble that's ever existed. Our market bubble is most similar to the .com crash, the .com bubble. So even then, even though for this third segment specifically, we haven't fulfilled the narrative of the .com crash, right? We're still very similar to it. So even though that's not happening, calling back to the .com crash still makes a lot of sense in that sort of perspective. Again, none of this is sort of a guarantee or anything like that. Just talking about likelihoods, arguments, good arguments that you can say again, 0.01% chance, because it was a 3% chance of a 3% chance that it would fulfill those 2 days in a row like that. We talked about that before, but anyways. So it's still meaningful given the context of what is going on. And we're going to be talking about as well the federal funds rate now, which is So we'll get into that. It's gonna get fun. But also, just want to point this out really quickly. I was saying that here, this line, this I should say resistance area would be the top for the third segment. It looks exactly like that. Like that's actually happened. So moving on really quickly though, just to give you guys a frame of what at least is going through my mind, having gone back and looking at from a different perspective, analyzing the great financial crisis in particular, we're following that one. Really since this happened, because as soon as this cycle started happening below these ones, all of a sudden that again I like showing you it's exactly what happened during the great financial crisis. But of course that's not the only argument. That's not the only perspective of why the great financial crisis. Because let's look at the length of the cycles here. So again, a theme of the three segmented periods, right, between all of these crashes. So when you look back to the great financial crisis, for the SPY in the very least, what happened was that we had the first cycle here being 10 days less than 2 months to the day, right? It was exactly 10 days less. We've done that exactly. You look to the middle section here, you see 2 months, but 2 days less than 2 months, right? You see that exactly to the exact day happened here, and then now we're seeing this complete again alongside the technical analysis, where we see it only reach up to basically the a middle section of or a bottom. Well, I'll put it like that. Different ways of phrasing the same thing, but basically right here to the bottom of the or middle section. Sorry. Again, what word do you want to use to describe the segment you're talking about? But anyways, to here. That's the point though. It reached up to that point. It looks the exact same. I could go on about the technical analysis, but it like even this segment, if you're wondering like why these two lines, it maps onto the exact same structure back then. And when you see a mirroring going on, the point is that it maps onto the exact day of what happened before. So again, and alongside, again, as this argument, right, alongside technical analysis, it looks like we're following it exactly. Again, not surprising, we're cycling of strategies. They work for a reason, that's why they do it. Anyways, so there's that. So just want to go over that market update. We are falling, and as far as what outlook into the future, we could very well find ourselves to the very beginning of July here, finding ourselves around this same area, and it wouldn't surprise me at all because when we look at the Fibonacci retracements, very significant levels, by the way, and also part of today, I want to go over a bit of technical analysis. If we have time, I don't want to drag it out too long. I'll try to go through it kind of quickly, but Fibonacci retracements, important, a part of technical analysis, looking at support and resistance areas, right? So Fibonacci retracements, both of these line up from both bull runs since the bottoming of COVID to this, this topping here, as well as from the bottoming, looking at significantly drawn out bull runs with very limited interruption, you would say. We find ourselves at the very bottoming of the great financial crisis to now this top, this longest bull run in history, as it's been called, or one of the longest ones. It maps up to like the same line, and it's not just that one. It's this one. It's that one. It's actually here. I can show you guys really quickly. They map up all along the way, and I think I might have said this before, but it's sort of a hinting at like this I should say the COVID bull run, right, is not quite the reference that we may very well be looking at when we see how far is this going to be declining. In fact, actually referencing the entire bull run, which makes sense as well on a number of different perspectives, but I'll leave it there. Point is, though, as they map up here, there, that one, and of course, the very, very top. The 50% line, funny enough, is actually not very often used anyways. So that's actually not like a legitimate one, as it usually is. So it's funny that that's the one that misses. Anyways, doesn't really quite matter though. The chance of that happening is extremely slim. But anyways, so just want to put that out there. And as for history, we should see something along the lines of perhaps a further crackdown after the beginning of July, consolidation, and then further, or we find ourselves here and it's around this area simply. I'm just thinking back to history. Yeah, it's we should find ourselves beginning July around the same area, right? Fibonacci lines, and something of short consolidation, short-lived consolidation, and then further crash. Okay. So I want to go over the federal funds rate. Okay, so this is going to get fun. So there's something, I think I might have mentioned this before, but I don't know. Check really quickly. This is still going. Yes, fantastic. Okay, beautiful. All right. So I think I might have said this before, kind of like briefly, but in the very least, I want to reiterate this because I think it's actually incredibly important, particularly in light of the CPI data that has just come out, where it was even worse. And so now the expectations for, the future meetings, like, they won't raise it, like, by that much. Maybe it'll be a 0.25 raise, right? 25 basis points, as it's called, for the federal funds rate. And I should probably say what this is, just to remind people. So the federal funds rate is two things. So first of all, it's the interest rate that is applied to the money that is printed by the semi-private bank that is the Federal Reserve, and then loaned back to everyone else. When this rate is high, all other loans are high. You may have very well seen in the news recently, the mortgage rates have been going up. Car loans, their rates have been going up. Their interest rates, and so and of course when this lowers, all the other ones lower as well. Okay, so when this happens, by the way, okay, so there's that. Two, the reason why we arguably, and quite well arguably, why we even had a COVID bull run is because of this. It crashed down to zero. The Federal Reserve was trying to prevent like a significant like economic turndown, so they crashed down their rates and made easy monetary policy. Right? You're allowed to get your hands on money more easily. But anyways, so there's that. The other thing is, into the future, looking at what now is going to happen, what is at least previously, it may be even worse, but almost something of a baseline. We can understand this. By year's end, we should be about the same level that we were at the very top of, just simply this area. I mean, this happened because of the great financial crisis. We crashed down, and then we started raising after some years had passed. And funny enough, this took so mind you something very important here. From the very bottom in here, the interest rates here to where then they peaked. It took 4 years. So they were raising the interest rates over the course of 4 years, right? And what did they peak at? They peaked at about 2.5%. Okay. The expectations for year's end is also about 2%, if not 3%, if not higher. Something important to note. In 2018, there was something called a taper tantrum. What that means is that the markets, the stock market in particular at least, had thought that the Federal Reserve was raising interest rates. They were tightening, right? Easy monetary policy, tightening is the inverse of that, right? It's raising rates, blah blah blah, and other things, but it's the main thing to point to. The markets had felt that they were doing it too fast, and the market had a taper tantrum where we fell about 20%, right? That's also only in the context of where we were. I mean, we had like high valuations, but we were not nearly where we are now. We were not, back in 2018, not nearly the same valuations again, but we've skyrocketed since then. Something very, very important now. This is the important thing to think about now in the context of looking at the federal funds rate. Every time we see there's a recession, which is something that we're looking at now, and also a market crash. This is the .com crash, by the way, right? We see a significant downturn in the federal funds rate. Okay, this is cushioning. This is easy monetary policy. It's supposed to help the markets. During the .com crash, the Nasdaq fell about 83%. That's the tech-heavy one. Fell about 83%. This was happening at the same time. Guess what was not happening at this time? Inflation. Inflation was not happening. We were not dealing with the same troubles of inflation as we were back here, nor back here, right? We might have seen some higher bits of inflation, but we were not in like the double digits or the high single digits like we are now, right? If you look at the CPI data that just came out right this month at 1%, that annualized over presuming that it's the same throughout the entire year, which it's not. It's a little lower, but really high reading. that annualizes 12%. That's double digits, right? That's what we had back at Volcker in the 1970s, and he did this crap. You're gonna see how high these interest rates got, right? That's crazy. Like up to like what is this? Like 19%. That's crazy, right over there. Anyways, that's double digits. We're not quite dealing with that, but we're very high single digits, which is like not good. Point being though, is that you can look at this situation where there's this massive market crash and the federal funds rate comes down to ease the markets, right? They were not dealing with inflation back then. They were dealing with it like we are now. Back here, right? We are now, right? And something I was actually meaning to complete this thought when I was bringing up the idea that this happened over the course of 4 years, right? We're doing this in 1 year, okay? That's extremely fast. That's like really, historically, that's stupid fast. We had a taper tantrum back here because of this, because it was spread over 4 years. We're doing what we did in 4 years in 1 year, during the largest market bubble that has ever existed, and we cannot do this. We cannot do this. Because we're dealing with inflation, guys. They weren't back then. That's why they were able to do that, because inflation was still tame. We are struggling now with inflation, and we're not going to be able to ease the markets like that. And so the market crashes that happened here, at least for the S&P 500, during the year the dot-com crash, 50%, 55%, and so now here, without this easing, without this cushioning, 65% very well. So just something very important to keep in mind. Again, this is very significant for easy monetary policy, the market doing well. When it's raised like that, they have a taper tantrum, blah, blah, blah. You know, and taper tantrums have happened before. It's not the only time, obviously. Really significant, understanding that we will not get this cushioning, and that could mean something pretty dire for the markets. Really quickly, I just wanted to say that I made some little updates on the card. I said before on here that, actually, before I do that, let me look at the next thing. I made some really small, just a couple different updates. I put an example of, so let me try to preface this. So the number, I put $185,000 for a 4-bedroom like townhome, or sorry, not townhome. I mean, it could be, but they're usually, anyways. For a 4-bedroom home or a quadplex, I put that as $185,000. Now, the reason why I did that, if you go out in today's market, you're not going to find that. Now, also recognize that we're in a larger housing, valuation-wise, a larger housing market bubble than we were back in before the Great Financial Crisis, right? Massive, right, bubble. So there's that to know. You won't find a 4-bedroom home, single-family home or quadplex, whatever, multi-family home, for $185,000. But based on history, 5 to 6 years from now, you may find something along those lines. I started looking at it again, and I found that a more realistic number was maybe $220,000. So I changed that. Instead of $185,000, $220,000. I have those numbers there because I want you guys to have. I couldn't fit it on here to explain like here's my reasoning behind all of this, but I wanted to put this number on there just so that you would have a frame of reference for something that you could idealize and try to seek. Because if I put something more reasonable, you might just see like a home that could do that and be like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's the best I can get, right? Instead I want to put something, so kind of my loose reasoning behind that. The other thing is that when I said, this is the last of the two things, when I said $29,000 a year, that did not include, from like rental income, right? That did not include HELOCs, which is drawing out the equity from your home and having access to that money. That did not include that HELOC money. It now does. So what is the number based off of the $220,000, two of them, of course, 2 FHAs, right? Two $220,000 homes, fully rented out, 4 bedrooms, right? And also drawing on the HELOCs is now $40,000. Now, mind you, though, it is very important, I put this on the card as well, to make sure that you are investing that HELOC money that you get so that you are able to beat the interest rate on it, and so you can like actually have access to it without just like, effectively, burning away your money. So you might have to think of a strategy where you can invest, again, long-term long-term viewing on leveraged ETFs, perfectly viable, 20%, 25% maybe very well. Because again, we were looking at 60 and 70 CAGRs, right, over the last 10 years, so you may very well find 20, 25% to be pretty easy. The interest rate for HELOCs is generally between 4 and 5%, very easy to beat. So just, have that in view. But yeah, so just updates on that really quickly. Okay, so the other thing I want to say really quickly as well, I think I might have said this last time, but just to reiterate, I kind of presumed, I guess subconsciously, and that's why I kind of like loosely skipped over it. When we were looking at taxes last time, I kind of thought like of everyone as coming under like a single, but that's obviously not true. For both long-term and short-term capital gains taxes, by the way. Short-term capital gains taxes falling under the same bracketing system, right? 20% of like how much money? No. As regular income on a federal scale. States differ, but at least in the very least, California, it makes no difference between long-term and short-term. It's the same percentage applied. By the way, also we're going to go over a really cool hack I found, like a really cool one, to avoid state income taxes. Of course, I mean, you'd have to like have commitment, which is like fair, but I shouldn't say like avoid taxes, but as a tax benefit that is real, that is an opportunity to those particularly who are traveling, who wish to travel or could see themselves traveling. We'll get into details about it later, but it's a really cool benefit, particularly for people in our age range who like need that pretty badly to build generational wealth, and a lot of us pulling ourselves out of poverty and shit, or the poverty line, sort of thing. We don't come from wealth. Anyway, so there's single. There's also married, filing jointly, married, filing separately, head of household. Again, you can go with TurboTax, something like that. Find out, what you would ideally want to be doing. They'll help you with that process. But just know that there are different categories here. Head of household is like you're the main breadwinner and you have dependents, that sort of thing. But just putting that out there, something else to note really quickly about taxes is that so you can utilize, it's called tax loss harvesting. You can use losses that you've like realized. So okay, so let's try to so terminology. So let's say that you have stock ABC, right? It's the ticker, even the name of the company, whatever, it doesn't matter. So you invest in the stock ABC, and you hold it for 6 months, and you bought it and you sold lower than you had bought it, right? So what this means is that when you had sold, let's say you invested $5,000, you lost $1,000, right? So you've realized $1,000 of losses. This can act as a tax deduction for your capital gains. So here's kind of how it works, and it gets a little more complicated. I'm going to leave that. I'll explain what I'm talking about, but not the part that I'm about to say right now is complicated. It's pretty straightforward. So I'll just try to read this off. So long-term and short-term losses, right? Again, it's longer than a year long-term. So if same thing, $5,000, I held it, I sold, right? After a year and a month of like owning the stock, and I still lost $1,000, right? Long-term, right? Losses. So long-term and short-term losses can offset both short-term and long-term gains, though they must always apply first to their own kind. So what this means is that let's say you have we might be able to draw it on the board maybe. I'll try to see if this makes sense. Just like saying it. It's pretty straightforward. So let's say you have with a particular stock, right, ABC, and then also like X. Okay, you know what? Actually, yeah, we're gonna go to the board. All right, hold on a second, guys. All right. So just really quickly talking about taxes here. Should be pretty straightforward stuff, but it's I'm a visual learner myself, so it's easier to imagine this one. It tips, doesn't it? Am I wrong about that? All right, whatever, it's working. Okay. All right. Okay. So let's say okay, so you invest in A, B, C, and also X YZ, right? And this is just on the short-term view. Again, the principles that I'm going to show you here, as far as like taxes, right? The principles will still apply to long-term, but I'm just going to use the example of short-term, right? So it'll make sense in a second. So again, you hold those for 6 months, and let's say you lost $1,000, and over here you made $3,000, right? Okay. And again, remember short-term capital gains. So here, short-term capital gains, right? So remember that for the short-term capital gains taxes, it's your short-term capital gains are applied under the same system as income, right? Just regular old income, right? And you can see, look that on Nerd Wallet, right? Great place to use that. So same thing, same bracketing system. So you can apply the $1,000 here that you lost to the $3,000. So what this means is that you combine these two, it ends up being a total of $2,000, okay? That you've made short-term capital gains taxes. Okay. The thing is, though, let's say that in the same year you had been holding I don't know DEF. Is that? Okay. Anyways, sorry, I was just like the alphabet. Anyway, let's say so this has been long term, okay? But in the same year, you had sold this, and what happened was that you had lost $2,000, okay? This gets applied to that, right? And now all of a sudden you got zero, right? So as far as capital gains taxes, and presuming this is only what you're dealing with, right? In terms of like what you've sold and bought and blah, blah, blah. Anyways, just really sold. Anyways, it'd be zero, right? You're not going to pay capital gains taxes that year. Of course, now if this wasn't 2,000, or if it was like 1,000, or you had another stock over here and it was like, well, plus 3, then that's long-term stuff, right? Long-term stuff, you're going to go ahead and apply the long-term, tax bracketing system. But the point about this is that you've applied first to its own kind, right? The short-term capital gains tax, so it comes out to 2, and then if you have anything like that left over that can be applied, because again, presuming this is only what you're dealing with, you lost $2,000 in the same year, you actualize that, you apply that, and now you don't have to pay anything because you got net zero. This is a part of the picture of tax loss harvesting. We'll talk more about this in the future, because then there's like depreciation of properties and shit like that, which is cool. But that aside though, so that there's that really quickly. That's basically how that works. Okay. So beside that, okay. The other thing is though, is that so you can do this, right? It's unlimited. It's unlimited. There's no, it's been $10,000 here, but 30,000 and blah blah. There's no limits like that. As far as, again, go over all this with tax expert, TurboTax, whatever. But that's that's kind of the picture. However, you are also able to apply. Let's say it's like this, right? Let's say it's instead of 2, it was 5. Okay. You still got negative $3,000, right? Negative 3,000. You can apply that to your normal income. Again, tax deduction. Okay, so tax deductions versus credits, it works like that. So a tax deduction is, let's say you make $100,000 just through normal income. You have $3,000 of a tax deduction. It means that you actually, as far as taxes are concerned, actually made $97,000. A tax credit, on the other hand, is like this. Let's say, okay, so I've made my money. I owe $10,000 of taxes. Like, I've gone through all the processes, whatever. I owe $10,000 of taxes. A tax credit would be like, and we can, earned income tax credit is an example of that. That's one of them. Explore them, that sort of thing online. I'll mention that in a second here. But anyways, let's say it gives you $1,000, right, of a tax credit. That $10,000 tax bill is now $9,000, right? Tax credits are applied directly to the tax bill, versus tax deductions are applied to your income, right? As to then lower your tax bill, but it's applied to your income. That's the point. I made actually less money out of that. Anyway. So this number, it's important to note this. So let's say, for example, right, you still had a net, from capital gains, right? You still had a negative $3,000. You can apply this as a tax deduction to your other income, in the very least, including normal income, right? I made $60,000 for my job, $60,000, right? No, I didn't. I made 57, right? There is, I believe, again, it was hard to exactly figure this out like for sure online, but I believe $3,000 is the limit for 1 year. Let's say this was not three, but it was $30,000, right? I can only apply $3,000 as a tax deduction in 1 year, but that rolls over into the next year. So now I got another $3,000 I can still apply again as a tax deduction. And now by 2 years' time, right, I have, $24,000. I was like 26, $24,000 left over as, in my records I can keep on applying. Caveat, hold on a second, because it is possible, from what I saw, there is actually a limit to the numbers of years that you can keep applying, right, that number, that loss, right, that capital gains loss. There's a limit to the number of years, possibly. There was also, elsewhere I saw that it was just like there is not a limit. Figure that out with TurboTax, your tax expert, but that's part of the picture of tax loss harvesting. And just to say, dealing with a TurboTax agent, as an example, you don't have to go with them, obviously. Make sure you pester them about and seek out, in your conversation with them, other tax savings, loopholes, investigate, just make sure that you're there pushing for that, fighting for yourself, and as well, looking around online on YouTube, whatever, just explore a shit ton, write them all down, ask a tax expert if this applies to you, blah, blah, blah. For example, on YouTube, here's a video, 7 ways to beat capital gains taxes on YouTube. Yeah, it's on YouTube. But of course, always ask about these things to a tax expert. Big point, keep track of that which you already paid taxes on and want to reinvest. So for example, dividends. So that you don't get double taxed. So what I mean right there is that, let's say that, because dividends, I believe, counts as just like normal income. So if you get, for example, the SPY, the ETF for the S&P 500, and you were to invest in that and you got dividends from that, and this may very well not apply to a lot of people because leveraged ETFs don't do dividends, but that aside, if you are going to, because it is a way to invest, dividend investing, it's a thing. I don't agree with it, but if you were to get dividends in that year, it's counted as normal income, I believe. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's normal. It counts as normal income. You pay taxes on that, and then you still hold that money, and then you invest it. You reinvest it back into, for example, like the SPY. And so when you get to later on in whatever, and you realize those gains, make sure that you're not going to include the dividends that you reinvested as a part of the net gains, because you already got taxed on that stuff. So keep track of it. If you do dividend investing, keep track of them. Just make sure you avoid double taxing. Okay, so what are we at right now? Because I still got to go over technical analysis. I don't know if I want to do that this time. Okay. Let me go over really shortly, in the very least, I want to go over smaller life hacks. So in this, I'm going to try to make this something of a loose theme that we have, that whenever someone finds out something like, oh, hey, there's this cool ass thing, to talk about it, bring it up, that sort of thing. So I'm sure many of you probably could really use this earlier on, but better late than never. There are a bunch of websites out there that will give you free textbook material or articles, and I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm sorry, I was just looking at one of the websites. Okay. Oh, that's what it's for. Okay, anyways. Just remember. All right, I'm just gonna run through these. Okay, so you got lib. Feel free to skip this because I'm gonna be writing them down. libgen.is. You got u1 lib.org. That's here. I'll do that. and then ethos.vl.uk, and then you got sci-hub.se, and then you have archive.org. Oops, got the L. It's .org. .org. Okay. And then let's see here. LEJ4 learning.com.pk. Okay. Is there a better one? It's just like so short. Alright, whatever. Wait, is that? Oh, no. Ah, dang it. On your side of the ass. Okay, anyways. So there's that one. And then PDF drive.com. And then finally, academia.edu. I don't know why I capitalized that. Anyway, so there's that. Okay, so those are all the websites where you get free textbook material, articles, yada yada.